Before I start, let us pray. Creator God, may your praise be ever on our lips. Guide us as we strive to walk in your divine truth and light amid the disquiet of this world. Amen.
Amen.
It's written, and that's not Father Jamie's fault, it's my fault because I said the wrong thing to him as to, this is not about religion, it's about organized religion. Because, and there's a big difference in that. Religions give us a lot, there's so much to be gained from religion. Now, it can help us get direction in our life. It can help us provide a moral code. The opposite of that is also true. It can also be used as a whipping stone against beliefs or a sense of good life. It can give us a sense of hope. But what I want to speak about is the crisis that we have within organized religions and kind of in society, and how that affects society as well. How it can distort our view of life, our values, how it can distort our call to hospitality and fairness and salvation. So what are some of the various religions we have? Obvious ones, we have a variety of different Christian and Catholic denominations. We have the evangelicals. Within the Jewish people, there's Reform, there's Conservative, there's Orthodox, there's Hasidic, there's Sikhism, there's Hinduism, there's Buddhism, there's a lot of isms. The Mormons. What are some of the other religions in our society? Okay, we're sitting in Texas. There is one big religion in Texas. And if you can't tell me what that is.
Football.
Football. It is an absolute. Lately, you know, you've got the religion of power. You have the religion of ambition. They have their own rules and regulations as to how they're to be worked out. We have a religion of addiction. Jason said workaholism. We have a religion of work. Recently, a big religion that has evolved all of a sudden is what? Surrounds football as well.
Patriotism?
Patriotism. The religion of the, well, the Constitution religion has been going on for a while, whether it's interpreted correctly or not. But then the religious symbol of the flag and the absoluteness of the flag, and forgetting somewhat of how it came about and how we came about. So those are secular type religions, but our organized religions are hoping to bring us up a certain path. Now to a certain extent they have the same goal, the same end goal, that we come to a relationship with the Almighty, with an unknown, because it's all based on faith. We sometimes can forget within organized religion who our neighbor is, and that our spirituality is intertwined in our neighbor. So today, and when I saw the schedule, today we celebrate St. Martin Luther. Why did Martin Luther do what he did? And the whole aspect of how did the 95 Theses come about? And from my perspective, Martin Luther was absolutely right, and to a certain extent wrong. Because instead of staying and trying to fight it through, he left. Put the 95 Theses up, left, and that opened up the floodgates to others to do the same thing. And he also opened up the opportunity or the aspect for people to start thinking for themselves. And church leaders don't like when you think for yourself. Corporations don't like when you think for yourself. Because when you think, you question. Martin Luther's not the only, we've had a modern day similar experience, and that was called Vatican II. And before Martin Luther, there was another similar experience, and that was St. Francis of Assisi, who challenged the church to minister to the poor and to not forget them. But I want to go back, and I want Martin Luther again, and looking at the 95 Theses and how it evolved into our even being more possessive and oppressive within organized religion. And if you read them, there's a couple of them that don't make sense, but most of them make a great deal of sense. The 14th, the less love is, the greater fear it brings. Because when we don't love, Martin Luther is telling us, we're afraid. We're afraid of what's going to be happening. From my perspective, I think those who are living with constant fear are living in purgatory. Fear is our purgatory, and it leads to despair. Martin Luther talks about the multitudes as being misled. But who misleads them? The clergy. It's the religious. They have the control. He also says that, the clergy will speak and preach as soon as the money hits the coffers. That's what will bring them about. History, at that time of history, it was interesting because you would stand on the church steps and you would wait for somebody, and it was during a certain period of time, hours in the morning. When they paid you, you went into one of the side altars and you, I can't say celebrated Mass, you said Mass because you received that money. So as soon as the money hits the coffers, then you did something. But he questioned, with indulgences, is the person buying the indulgence worthy? Or is that a sinner buying for a sinner? And is that person in need of penitence? I never bought an indulgence, so I don't know. But the indulgence, he insisted, should not be compared to a work of mercy. He constantly went back to, we are to take care of our neighbor, and that giving help to the needy was more important and more essential than buying an indulgence. It led to vanity and falsehood, and this I did not know, that the Pope later on could reverse an indulgence. A later Pope could reverse an earlier indulgence. I didn't know that. Or maybe I did know it and I forgot it. He questions, does the Pope have the same power as the cross of Christ? We were losing sight that it was the cross that was essential, not the clergy. We lost the meaning, and I think we still lose some of that meaning, as to what the cross was all about, and not what our words are. Martin Luther insisted that the true treasure of the church was the gospel. And his insistence as an Augustinian was that they lost sight of the gospel. But it didn't stay within his total vision of Lutheranism, or Lutheranism didn't stay within his total vision of Martin Luther, because what happened? A variety of synods evolved of Lutheranism. One very accepting, as we are in this church here. Some that are very unaccepting. In fact, the bishop and Jason live in two different synods areas that are very unaccepting of everybody in life. And it's very unfortunate. But they're so absolute. They use the scripture not as inspired by God, but as an absolute written document. We allowed ourselves to be consumed in that which will give us life, challenge our culture, challenge our society to something that we beat people up with. We forget that the scripture, the Gospels especially, is that Jesus came and fulfilled the law. It doesn't mean that we ignore that section of the Bible, but we understand that in fulfillment of the law, we have been released from, well, in Judaism there's 613 laws that must be followed, and we can find them all in Leviticus. But Christ overcame that. Christ took that upon himself and freed us. And that's what I believe many of organized religions have forgotten about, especially in the Christian denomination. I can only speak Christ overcoming the law from a Christian perspective. We can't force that on anybody else because they haven't come to that point. The aspect of organized religion is that they are now exerting more control, more oppression. They strengthen the notion that responsibility is coming from the outside. That God is responsible for my life. Out of 7 billion people, I don't know that God works within each of our lives, but I don't think God is making our decisions. I think within prayer, within reflection, we make a decision, and hopefully we are listening to the Spirit as we get to that. I find one of the most appalling statements that anybody can make, and we see these on TV on a regular basis. A natural disaster comes through, and somebody whose home was not touched by it says, well, God was with me. God saved me. God blessed me. God showed mercy on me. But God didn't like your neighbor? See, many people don't think before they speak, because that's a judgment of somebody else's life that I don't think we are really qualified to make. So if you hear that statement from other people, you know how I feel about it. That responsibility from outside says that we are free to act in a judgmental way, or in an oppressive way, or in a prejudicial way. It says that we don't have to do works of charity, and I will accept you as long as you believe as I do. But belief is only part of our challenge. Faith without works is empty or dead, depending on which interpretation we get. And we are challenged to do that on a regular basis. So what I'm working on in this is that organized religion, and Father Don said something about this, or not this part, but organized religion is noise. It's a lot of words. It's the noise of hearing ourselves and not listening. Religious leaders like to hear the sound of their own voice. Olstein, Falwell, John Paul II. I could keep going on and on, but I don't have any other names here. But But clergy from pulpits, if you've been in different churches, you know that they talk sometimes to hear themselves talk. And they forget to listen. The words, what do they give us? They give us more dogmas, more doctrines. As long as you believe what I believe, you are not responsible for your actions. And the beliefs are absolute. That's unfortunately, the absoluteness of organized religion. You have to be in this step and march in this order. It's like being in the circus. So I believe that organized religion in this framework leads to certain questions. Is organized religion absurd? Well, we have to also ask that for ourselves. As an organized body, we're not independent. We are independent. We're not immune from that question, because we do have certain beliefs that make us Christian, but we have to make sure that we constantly ask the question, is our organization absurd? Is organized religion a mere human effort? Sometimes I think it is. Sometimes I think that organized religion is based solely on what I want and not on what is going to be good for the community, without making judgments of any particular ministry that is out there. Does organized religion truly provide a moral compass, or is it just a tool for judgment, prejudice, and oppression? For Thomas Fuller, who was an English churchman and historian, he died in 1661, said a good religion is a good life. He said about religion, a good life is the only religion. And for him it was a good life that he helped those around him. We need to move from what organized religion is into the spirit of what religion and within an organization can and should be, I think. Today's Friday. I'm one of these type of people that I like to pull things from all over the place. And today's Friday. If I were back in Brooklyn, tonight at 6 o'clock, I would be going to a synagogue and celebrating with a Reformed community. Now, where I live is a totally Orthodox Jewish community. I would never go into one of their shuls because, one, I wouldn't understand what they were saying. They don't use a transliterated Hebrew, so and I can't read the Hebrew text as written in Hebrew. But I go there because it's a wonderful way to start my weekend. It has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with my faith life, but it has a lot to do with my spiritual life. It's a night of prayer and song. And sometimes the song is just one note, and it may go on and on and on. So it's a wonderful experience for me, but it's a way to expand my horizons. If you look in my library, you'll find books on Buddhism, on Taoism, on most of the isms, so that I can get an idea of what else is out there. Moving into the Buddha says, one of the Buddhas say, just as a candle cannot burn without fire, people cannot live without a spiritual life. When I'm in that synagogue, it has nothing to do with them being Jewish, my being Catholic. It has to do with the fact that we are praising, taking time out of a day and just spending that time in prayer. The difference in the prayers? There's no difference in the prayer. They just don't end with the words Jesus Christ, through Jesus Christ our Lord. The prayers are very much the same and similar. And we use them in our interfaith service in June. It gives everybody there an opportunity to reflect. The benefit of my neighborhood, I absolutely am totally love where I live, because on Saturday, the Sabbath, there are minimal amount of cars. The stores are all closed. The neighborhood is shut down. In October, with the high holy days, everything, my neighborhood was shut down half of October. The seriousness with which the ultra-Orthodox celebrate the Sabbath, the Sunday, or the Saturday, is paramount to nothing I've ever experienced. And this year, the holiest day of the year is Yom Kippur. However, you can still carry things on Yom Kippur. You can carry your prayer book to the... This year it was on Saturday, the Sabbath. The importance of the Sabbath overshadowed Yom Kippur. And a neighbor asked me to go to the synagogue, walk her to the synagogue, to carry her prayer book. Because on the Sabbath, you cannot carry anything. So they take their life very, very seriously. And I admire that, but then I can't live with those 613 rules. And rules that determine, just like going to the synagogue on a Saturday, you can't carry anything. How you eat, how you dress, how you, everything. Every aspect of their life. That takes away from the time of reflection. The beauty of the day is that you don't have anything going on, and you can sit and reflect. And we forget this. Where religion, organized religion, is noise, reflection is our quiet time. We forget how to do that. We forget to take time to be more spiritual, to be more contemplative. Even between our readings. If you notice how we read the first reading and then we hit that responsorial psalm without thinking. It took a while when I was at Blessed Sacrament in Michigan. It took over a year to finally get people to at least take 15 seconds of quiet. This is the word of the Lord. 15 seconds isn't that long, but 15 seconds is an eternity to the majority of us. We don't know how to be quiet. We don't know how to be settled. We don't know how to hear that first reading will speak to our lives in some way. And we do the same thing. We hit it running after the second reading and right into the Alleluia verse. So it takes time, but that small little bit of time helps. When I drive, I will drive for many hours without the radio on. At home, I live without the TV on. I prefer that. Friends always ask me, well, have you seen this show? No, I haven't seen that show. I don't know what those shows are. I don't know the what do you call it? The TiVo has shows on there that I will never watch. I just finally go through and delete them. Tommy says, well, you should watch it. It's fun. I don't have time for that. I don't want to make, no, I have time for that. I don't want to make time for that. There's a big difference. Where we, as a modern society, need to start taking a spiritual mindedness towards life. Respect for our earth. Respect for what is coming to us. Things like here in Texas, we can throw these away. In New York, we can't throw them away because they cost us a nickel a bottle. We don't even recycle them because there's a special way to do it. But recycling, not using things like styrofoam and moving away from things like this. A respect for the product that comes out of the earth, not using as much herbicides. realizing that Mother Earth, that gave us our life, and that we will go back to. I just walked through the cemetery. You know, we give ourselves back to Mother Earth because our spirit is gone. The body will take care of a new plant, a new tree. There's one cemetery someplace in the Midwest that you can actually be wrapped around the roots of a tree and plant it, and that's what fertilizes the tree. It's a whole different perspective of giving life after you're gone. The order I was with, the Franciscans, have had to move several cemeteries because they sold the land, so they had to dig them up and move them someplace else. Many of the men alive now said, nah, change their wills, and they're doing cremation so that nobody has to go through that again. Get planted around a tree. Would be wonderful. It would also be very spiritual. But both religion and our spiritual lives force us to question. Religion started to try to give answers. It doesn't matter whether you look at the Native American traditions, if you look at African traditions, Far Eastern traditions, essentially what they're trying to do is make sense out of life. How are we born? Why do we die? Why does the sun come up? Why is there night? Why is there day? What are the stars? We tried to give some kind of explanation, and we came up with a variety of things that led to control, but they don't have to. If we reflect on the various things in life, we will find that we can be quiet. We can be calm. We turn the darn TV off. We turn the phone off. You know, the noises that it makes. When we're driving someplace, we don't need to be speaking to our best friend. When we're in the grocery store, we don't need to be speaking to anybody. But what we do need to be doing is being aware of the fact that I have a can of tomatoes in my hand, and what those tomatoes are going to do for me and for my family. And when I'm looking at the vegetables and I'm feeling them and touching them, it's the what of our spirit. It's the giving that we know that we are going to give, whether to our family, or as you have been giving to us here during these, well, the 2 days so far. That generosity of taking care of the other. How do we take care of the other? How do we take care of the earth? These are questions that we may never have a total understanding, but it gives us an opportunity to take time. I feel that the worst aspect of life is not knowing how to question, but not knowing how to listen. We're afraid, and I think one of our greater fears is the fear of quiet, the fear of silence. I don't know, I've told Don that I would go up to Genesee, which is a monastery in northern New York, but even there, couldn't be any further from the middle of nowhere. Miles and miles away, I could still hear the darn trucks driving by. It is almost impossible to escape the noises of our society. You know, and as I'm hearing these things go by regularly, we are all searching for something. We're searching for that meaning within our lives. Some find it easy to be non-health responsible because of their religious beliefs. But the search that we have works with the spiritual director. And that spiritual director does not necessarily have to be a member of the clergy. You might find that a spiritual director is somebody who is younger than you, a child. Out of the mouths of babes sometimes comes the essential truth in our life. Though I think, no, not I think, I know, if we take time to reflect, we can start to find that meaning that will allow us to work with our neighbor in a non-judgmental way, to help us live the golden rule, to respect, to be a person that expresses kindness, to think before we speak, and to understand that we are more similar than we are different. And I think in today's world, and I'm having a hard time with this more than anything because I have been listening to I do try to catch some of the news. In today's world, in this country, and not only in this country, but in others, the differences that we have are being emphasized more than the similarities. And as religious leaders and people of a religious community, we need to understand that what Pope Paul VI said, if you want peace, work for justice, should be on our flagpoles, because that's the essential. And Micah, the book of Micah also says, we are called to do justice, called to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with God. And that, I think, is our call to a spiritual religion and not just a religion of dogma and doctrines. And that is all I have to say. Does anybody have any questions?
I just really appreciate Monsignor. You know, as a young man, it was sort of eye-opening for me to learn the difference between religion and spirituality, and how it is that, you know, religion serves a certain purpose, but I mean, it's common knowledge in my own relationship with my husband. He doesn't have a spiritual tradition like we do, or a faith, an institution like we do, but still, you know, to recognize our brothers and sisters who are all, we have more in common than that which will divide us with the 7 billion people you say that share this earth with us. So just really appreciate your
7.45 right now. I don't know how I would do it, and it's kind of an anathema statement, but the title I'd like to work on is Forget Religion and Encounter God. You know, because I think sometimes religion holds us back from the encounter of God, depending on what we consider the encounter of God is. I kid that I haven't picked up that message from God yet as far as with my future. But that encounter of God is with each individual person that I meet, and we forget that. And maybe we don't forget that, but I think society does forget that.
I think religion is the excuse we use to not encounter God.
That excellent. It takes away the responsibility.
You know, for many years I studied and tried to learn everything I could about the 12 steps of AA. And the third step is to turn your will and your life over to the care of a higher power or over God as you understand that higher power. Which pretty much, you know, a lot of people interpret that to mean if religion helps you to get to God, fine. If it doesn't, go straight to God and find that higher power in your life.
Mm-hmm. But the only way to find that higher power is if we take the time. You know, and then I know we have parents here. How busy are you? How many are, well, football moms here, soccer moms? You know, we take our kid, we begin running from 6 in the morning, and we finish when we finally get a little peace and quiet after the kids are in bed at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And if you live a life like I do, 2 o'clock in the morning is no big deal with Father Michael last night. That's kind of regular for me.